Hello and welcome to the news here on Magic Bricks Now, India's first 24/7 property business channel. I'm Krishna Kumar. Let's take a look at the top stories that we're tracking. Real estate is out of the ambit of the GST. That's from the report Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian has submitted to the Finance Minister today. The GST rate has been kept between 15 to 15.5%. With this report, the country is one step closer to a unified tax regime. The central government has released a draft rental housing policy. The Urban Development Minister Venkaiah Naidu says it's time for ownership housing and the rental housing market to complement each other. Slum dwellers in Maharashtra are set to get smart cards that prove their ownership rights. This will be done through an ambitious biometric survey that the Maharashtra government is rolling out. The process could cut time taken in slum rehab. Chennai limps back to normalcy. Waterlogging gradually recedes. Rescue operations continue in full swing, but power shortages and poor network continue through the city. The 24th edition of Times Property Expo begins. Magic Bricks Now gets you the latest trends and properties on offer at the fair. Straight to the big story of the day. The Chief Economic Advisor-led panel submitted its recommendations on the GST. Here are the big takeaways relevant to us as home buyers. Firstly, standard GST will range between 17 and 18%. The committee has given states two rate options. They could opt for a single rate of 15% or a range of 17 to 18%. But the most significant announcement is the fact that real estate, along with alcohol, has been kept out of the ambit of the all-important GST. Listen in.
Based on our analysis, which of course will become public, that the R&R should be 15%. So we're giving a range, 15 to 15.5, but we're also expressing our preference and view that it should be towards the lower end of that. So that's the first number. This then gets translated into a structure of rates, a low, a standard rate, and what we call a high or a demerit rate on certain kind of luxury kind of items. The low rate and the high rate are, what we said should be 12 and 40, right? 40, that's the low rate. And now remember, these are all national numbers. So 12 means 6 plus 6. What we've presented here is a range for the standard rate. Now this standard rate will be the same for goods and services. That rate will depend upon how you tax precious metals. The standard rate will vary between approximately 17 and 18%. If we had the luxury or if the political process decided to have one rate, it would be 15% for the GST. But if you have to have a variety of rates because of social considerations and underlying policy objectives, then you get a three-rate structure of 12 and 40 for the low and the very high rate, and this key standard rate will vary between approximately 17 and 18%, depending a lot on these choices made about exemptions and how precious metals are treated. So this is the kind of key. Now, how this will be allocated between the center and the states will again, of course, be decided by the GST Council, but it's clear that this allocation will and must reflect the revenues to be raised at the center and the states. The committee also recommends that given that Make in India is so important and that you need to make in India by making one India, the committee recommends eliminating all the taxes on interstate trade, including the 1% additional tax. So I think this is, if you believe in Make in India, this has to be part of that.
And to get a perspective on this, we are being joined on the phone line by Satish S., partner in direct tax at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Satish, thank you so much for joining us here on the news and Magic Bricks. Now, talk to us. Real estate has been kept out of the ambit of the GST. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, in my opinion, keeping real estate out of the ambit of GST is certainly not a welcome measure from an industry point of view. Assuming that I am in a situation whereby I'm a real estate player and I am outside the ambit of GST, and my vendors obviously will be in GST, so whereby any of these input services that I obtain, or it can be raw materials, it can be capital goods. All these procurements will be part of GST. And the moment I am out of the ambit of GST, these costs will be to my account. These certainly will not be creditable. This will be a cost for me. And hence, I would feel that this is not a very ideal thing to do. On top of it, it is not just about an implication of VAT and service tax. Some of these commodities, when I procure, can even carry an element of excise duty. So all these will become a cost burden as far as I am concerned, without a credit being available, being a vendor into GST, and I as a real estate player outside the ambit of GST. So this is certainly not a very welcome measure from a real estate company perspective. On top of it, assuming the property taxes remain, the challenge is this property taxes being on land transactions, that is on anything to do with immovable property. This again is going to be a standalone tax, and which again is going to add to my tax implications. Now, if at all at some point the government decides to get real estate into the ambit of GST, even then the question will be of classification, because it has components of service and goods. Will it be classified at a 12% rate, that is a lower rate, or will it get covered under the 17 to 18% band that the government is talking about? So there are implications either way, but assuming that real estate is going to be outside the ambit of GST, certainly it's not a very welcome measure.
All right, Satish, tell us, then I'd like to ask you just one thing. How will this impact the home buyer? Talk to us about that. Will I as a home buyer end up paying even more tax than what I do right now?
My view is yes, because the moment the entire tax system is going to be inefficient for a real estate player, certainly it is going to be part of his cost. And the moment it becomes cost, somebody will have to recover it from a home buyer like you and me. And effectively, it is going to push up the flat prices with this kind of a measure that the government is talking about. And certainly that goes against, the very principle of, what the government is talking about in terms of, more economical housing and, trying to get the real estate prices lower and all that. Certainly, I think this is a contra-measure.
And also, this also means that you're already keeping petroleum products and alcohol out of the ambit of the GST, and now real estate, which is a huge chunk of the economy, being kept away. So do you think that in this sense, the government is sort of cutting itself short by not keeping the real estate industry as part of the GST?
Absolutely, because the impact of this is not only for home buyers like you and me. This can even mean commercial properties, and the moment it has an impact on commercial properties, it is going to impact the entire gamut of business. It can be commercial spaces, it can be office spaces, it can be warehouses, it can be homes. So it is going to have a cascading implication on the entire business of the country. So I would actually urge if the government can do a bit of rethinking on this aspect.
All right, Satish, just wanted to understand one thing before I let you go. What I, as a home buyer, how do I view this, and what do I do? Say, for example, if I'm sitting on the fence and I'm just about to buy a house, should I rush up my purchase or still wait for more clarity on this?
I would actually feel that at this point of time, we kind of wait and watch, because it's only a recommendation today by the CEA. And there's nothing final about it. We'll have to anyway wait for the constitutional amendment bill to be passed in the winter session. The reactions from the opposition and all that. So I suggest we need to wait and watch and possibly look at the fine print, because we've just heard the recommendation of the CEA at this point of time. And I would actually feel that at this point of time we wait and watch. In any case, one major aspect which I would imagine at this point of time is land price, which is a portion of the entire cost, which is recovered from a purchaser of a property, is a major element in terms of cost. And it's a question of how the government wants to segregate the value of land, because here we are talking about taxing a transaction which has an element of movable goods and a bit of immobile property. So there has to be a proper and a robust mechanism to kind of delink the value of the land and the value of the rest of the works contracts to make it in terms of a valuation mechanism, so that it becomes easier for even the industry to comply, and then kind of keep the tax costs at a fairly minimum rate so that there is no cascading effect on the flat buyers or the property buyers.
Satish of PricewaterhouseCoopers, thank you so much for joining us here on the news and bringing us your perspective on the all-important GST. Moving away from that, after 3 days of heavy downpour, Chennai is finally limping back to normalcy. The rain has mostly come to a stop in the city, thankfully, except for light showers in certain areas. Waterlogged areas are becoming dry, with water receding in many parts of the city. Rescue and relief teams have intensified their operations. The government has deployed 40 army teams, 6 navy teams with 12 boats and several relief teams as well. Additionally, 1,200 NDRF personnel, 100 boats and 200 divers were deployed as well to rescue stranded people in flood-hit areas. The city is still faced with acute power shortages, and mobile and landline networks too are still problematic. At least 14 people died due to acute power shortages in hospitals. In the dry areas of the city, grocery shops, ATMs and other shops were finally opened. Train services along the suburban Chennai Arakkonam line were partially restored. The Chennai Metro is also up and running. The Met Department has retracted its earlier statement and has said that Chennai will witness low amounts of rainfall for the next 2 to 3 days. My colleague Padmaja sent us this report on what's actually happening on the ground in Chennai. Take a look.
In what comes as good news for Chennai, the main roads in most areas have now dried out, have become accessible. Relief material can come till a certain point to them on vehicles, or they can try and get out. But what happens in some areas, like this one, in Vellacheri for example, what you see right there was supposed to be an arterial road. There is no sign right next to those yellow posts. This was an arterial road which has completely disappeared. So even if the main road is accessible, to get to that road in itself becomes a task. I would like to show you right here, there is this entire road that is completely washed away. There you see, this was the side road next to these houses, and this is completely washed away. It's gone underwater. So it's become like this huge lake, this entire area. And this is where the administration needs to wake up. The state government, for example, needs to come to these areas of Vellacheri where there are some individuals. There is the airport, for example, which is airdropping foodstuffs. And there are some locals who are trying to come through on big vehicles. But the state government also needs to come to these particular areas because these houses have turned into little islands. What's also noticeable is that while there was time and if possible, thanks to the airport and the NDRF and the army force that were operating, most people did try to get out when there was time. Now with the water levels having receded a little bit, the boats cannot really make their way to these places. So the only way to get out is to try and brave this waist-high water, or in some places even shoulder-high water. And which is why people are preferring to remain instead of trying to get out. They're trying their luck with really getting airports to drop them food stuff and sustain them over the next few days. With video journalist Manoj Singh on board and airport data,
Now, my colleague Anusha too is in Chennai, and she sent us this report on how citizens are slowly gaining access to basic amenities like groceries.
We are at a grocery store, a supermarket in Nandanam locality. Now this locality was completely inundated for about 3 days. Roads full of water. As of today, the water levels have receded. People have started coming out to buy groceries here. We have a few residents in and around. Ma'am, you were speaking about how in the locality that you were at, you were stuck at home for so many days. How did you manage, with water everywhere?
It was very difficult. We couldn't get out of the house. So I live in a 4-floor apartment, and till first floor level the water came to the first floor level, so we couldn't even move out. Boats weren't even coming in the first day and all. Like, there were no cell phone signals, we couldn't charge our phones because there was no electricity and all that. It was very, very difficult.
I see that you've come out for the grocery shopping today. What was the grocery at home like? Was there difficulty in accessing it? Was there difficulty in getting milk? How did you manage?
We are not getting milk even now. Milk is like really difficult. We are not able to get get milk anywhere across the city, and even if we get it, prices are double, triple and all that, so accessing milk is very difficult.
Good sign that the water has receded now. Do you feel more confident in wading out?
Let's hope and see, because I'm waiting. They say from 5th to 8th again there's another cyclone, so just waiting and seeing, because we can't access the net and all that. So no signals in the phones and all that. So
You're telling us that it was very difficult for them to manage this entire scenario. It was difficult for them to even get out of their homes. As of now, people have started coming out to grocery stores. They are here shopping. They are finally confident of coming out of the house, but definitely following a wait and watch policy.
Now, even as the rest of the country is with Chennai, areas like Kanjipuram and Puducherry are still submerged by the heavy downpour. The citizens over there are stranded and have not received aid as well. We can only hope that the situation over there improves quickly. Moving away from that, the 24th edition of the Times Property Expo kickstarted today, and Magic Bricks Now's editor Faye D'Souza was amongst the panel members. The expo brings together developers and consumers and gives them a platform to interact on a one-on-one basis. My colleague Aishwarya Paliwal went to the expo and she tells us about some of the trends that she spotted at the expo this year. Take a look.
At the 24th edition of Times Property Expo, we have seen close to 30 developers putting up stalls. And in these stalls, we spotted some of the trends. One of the trends is that most of these developers are now making 1 and 2 BHKs, which means they have realized that if they want their sales to go up, they need to shorten the ticket size at which they were selling homes. Another trend that we spotted is that a lot of these houses are now starting from 50 lakhs and going up to 1 crores. The areas where most of these developers are bringing their houses is Ghatkopar, Vashi and Thane. Another trend is that a lot of builders from Dubai have set up stalls here. They are trying to go all out to lure in Indian consumers. And the third trend that we spotted is that a lot of these developers are looking at India from a long-term perspective. One of the Dubai developers told us that he wants to bring in affordable housing in the Indian segment in the next 2 years. So I can say for sure that looking at the stalls here, a lot of these players are now looking at investing in affordable housing, keeping in view with the PM's ambitious plan of housing for all by 2022. This is me signing off from the expo. Back to you.
Now, get more of Dubai's style homes soon here in India. Danube Properties, which is known to make affordable homes for buyers living in Dubai, is soon set to make its mark in the Indian real estate market by 2017. In an exclusive conversation with my colleague Disha Shah, Danube Properties' head of property development, Atif Rahman, spoke about the company's plans to make affordable houses here in India. Listen in.
Currently we have got 5 projects, all of them under construction. It is of tune of 1.5 billion dirhams and it clocks around 2.2 million square feet under construction. That's how it is. And it's a mix of villas, townhouses, studio 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. Yeah.
So do you have any plans to enter the Indian market?
As of now, we currently clearly focused on Dubai market, which is very well regulated, very safe for investors to invest their money into, and above all, it creates a very high return on investment. Next year, we are already planning for a project in Abu Dhabi, and 2017 is when we are going to look at the Indian market. Yeah, that's when we plan to do. We are looking at tier 2 cities. That's what I can share with you right now. Ticket sizes, affordable housing, we believe 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments starting from say a 20-25 lakh going up to 70-80 lakh rupees.
The Maharashtra government has given the Slum Rehabilitation Authority, or SRA, the power to handle all projects related to slum redevelopment. The SRA will issue smart cards to slum dwellers as a part of this process. My colleague Ruchi Deshpande gets us this report with all the details.
The Maharashtra government has come out with a biometric scheme for verifying the slums that are up for rehabilitation under the SRA Act in Mumbai as well as Thane. Now, the CEO of SRA, Mr. Asim Gupta, told us that this biometric verification system will ensure thumbprints of the exact dweller of the slums. This will cut down on the litigation process, and this will also ensure that the slum dweller gets his slum in place. After the survey has been done, which is also, mind you, a door-to-door survey that is conducted by the government under the SRA scheme, every slum dweller will get a smart card that will have all the details of his hutman and will ensure the deadline that is given to get this slum hutman in place. Just to give you a brief background, these slums were to be developed by the BMC as well as MADA, but due to project delay, they were handed over to the SRA from this month, that is the 1st of December.
Now, Ruchi also caught up with the CEO of the SRA, Aseem Gupta, who told her more about the slum rehab body's plans to increase affordable housing stock in the city. Listen.
How many slums are you directing this towards in Mumbai and Thane?
So we expect around 12 to 13 lakh hutments as per the census figure. Finally, because census figure sometimes when they are classifying something as slum, it may not be slum or something, because we really do not know. But expected is around 13 to 14 lakh if you finish off the Thane as well as the Mumbai slums. That is the expectation, but some of these are on Government of India land. So depending upon the NOCs which we get, we will do that survey. Otherwise 7-8 lakhs of Mumbai and Thane on Government of Maharashtra or private slums.
There has been talk of housing for all being clubbed together with an SRA scheme.
So the idea is, we had tried to move a change, we already done 37-1 for that, to promote it, to encourage it. It's not going to be compulsory. And it is that if he makes affordable housing and surrenders to Government of Maharashtra, to SRA or to MADA at around 75% rate of ready reckoner, so that we can make it available to people at 80% rate of ready reckoner. So it will be like bringing down the cost of that by 20%. Then we will give him around 25% of extra construction, because this is what he has lost in giving us at 75%. So that scheme is still in the process of being implemented, not yet completed. In the sense, the process is not yet completed.
My last question to you, there has been talk of private developers, private owners giving their lands for SRA schemes. So how many proposals have you seen in that?
See, there are a lot of slums which are on the private land. So if you are a slum, if you are an owner and you already have a slum on it, then it's your first right to develop it. But if you do not develop it in whatever time limit we give, then we are not going to wait forever and we can go ahead and purchase it. I cannot oust you from your ownership land without acquisition. So frankly, we gave a notice to around 602 acre owners. There are 5 big trusts and 3 private companies which has huge, like let's say 70-80% private slums are on these lands. We gave notices, and some of them have responded, some of them have not responded, and almost 2 lakh square meter, almost like 40 or 50 acres. We have started a next step on acquisition, which is called joint measurement, but the acquisition takes its own time.
Now, the Minister of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, Sri Venkaiah Naidu, has come out strongly in support of promoting rental housing stock in the country. The Urban Development Minister said that rental housing is more inclusive than ownership housing, which has been the focus of housing interventions by the governments. My colleague Deepa Rana caught up with Housing Secretary Nandita Chatterjee and asked her about the government's new policy, foreign direct investment and the real estate investment trusts or REITs. Take a look.
After our discussion on this model rental housing policy, we will encourage models to be built. Whether it's a rent-to-own model, whether it's, built your own model, there will be a large 3-4 models in the rental housing policy. And once these models are built, we will ask the states to examine and adapt it to their requirements. So each state will go in for a different model or maybe a combination of models. Housing being in a sector which is essentially a private good, we would expect most of these housing stocks to come from the private sector. But at the same time, it doesn't prevent the government, particularly the parastatals, the development authorities, the housing boards, and the urban local bodies, also to contribute to the social housing, which is particularly meant for the, for the more vulnerable sections of the society. Government is already encouraging a lot of relaxation and looking at a very liberalized environment for the foreign direct investment. So obviously, one of the most important sectors is the real estate sector, and I'm sure absolutely this is going to be one of the priority areas.
And with that, we have run out of time on this edition of the news. But remember, if you have any feedback or suggestions for us, write to us on the email ID that's flashing at the bottom of your television screens. We are also on Twitter and Facebook, so feel free to tweet to us or post a query on our Facebook page. Also, check out our website, www.mbnow.in, and see our channel live streaming on that website. And with that, I take your leave. This is Krishna Kumar saying goodbye.